Hi, everyone. I'm Ginevra. She's Sharon. And we are super excited to have two of our Fibro heroes as guests on the Fibro Show. We've got Tami Stackelhous and Melissa Swanson.
Yeah, Tammy is an award-winning author, founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, host of the Fibromyalgia podcast, and executive producer of the feature documentary Invisible. Tammy teaches fibromyalgia patients how to take back control of their lives and health using her signature fibromyalgia wellness framework so they can break free from the prison of their bodies, have become with fibro, and begin living the lives they love. Connect with Tammy through her podcast at fibromyalgiapodcast.com.
And Melissa Swanson is founder of Fibro Warriors Living Life. Find her on Facebook and at her website, fibrowarriorsliving.life.com. And she's author of Ravyn's Doll, How to Explain Fibromyalgia to Your Child. And I always had that book in my clinic, and I was telling her earlier that it would always walk off because I considered it donations because I felt like it had such useful information for folks that were struggling with parenting with fibromyalgia. So anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm a big fan.
That's amazing. What both of you have achieved, and I got to know both of you guys through the Leaders Against Pain program when I was vice president of education for the National Fibromyalgia and Chronic Pain Association. Leaders Against Pain was a program that we offered to help people learn advocacy skills, support group skills, and so that's how I got to meet you too. And it's been wonderful. And I know that's actually, I think, where your friendship started, right?
Yes, we sat next to each other in the front row.
And that's absolutely all it took.
And now you're Fibro besties.
Absolutely, yeah. We're counting down the days until I'm out there again. So
I love seeing that. And I have to say, I've been in Leaders Against Pain for, I can't remember when it was founded. But when it started, like, I am still friends with so many of the classes from that. So it's neat, the bonds that it builds. And I think that, if any of you are listening to this and you have not had the opportunity to talk to another individual with fibro yet, it's such an important thing. It's so healing. So if you have the opportunity to go to a support group, which, by the way, hey, I have one that's virtual online, so you can attend from anywhere. Learn more at managefibro.org. There's Awareness Day events coming up. And speaking of that, that was one reason why we really wanted to have you guys on today, because the two of you are doing amazing work and painting the country purple. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, so one of our infamous times that Melissa and I get together. So it was about 3 years ago, and she came out and visited me for a week. And we always joke that we try to solve the world's problems when we're together.
I can relate to that, Ginevra.
Yeah, exactly. So I had been thinking actually for a while that, there's all these people doing proclamations. Like Sharon, you've done yours forever. And there've just been so many. I mean, Melissa and I learned how to do this from you. But everybody was kind of doing their own thing. And we found that sometimes we would apply, we would be told no, but then somebody else would, post that they had the proclamation from that state. And I thought, we're duplicating efforts, right? And then around that same time, I was also thinking, I've trained all these people. I have a podcast with thousands of listeners. Like, there's sort of this built-in army that we could use, right? And so I was talking to Melissa about this, and but I don't have the bandwidth, right? All these other things that I'm already doing, you can't take on another project. But it seemed like such a waste to not use my audience to help do this, right? And also to coordinate with everybody else, what everybody else is doing, so that we don't have, 3 or 4 different people trying to get a proclamation from one
Right.
state or
Right.
whatever.
Working together rather than like
Yeah.
separate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was talking to Melissa about this, telling her all of this, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that's mine."
Yay. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah. So, I mean, Melissa can tell you more about like the process and the organizing and all of that kind of stuff, but that's kind of where it all started.
And can you tell me, like, I don't quite understand exactly, and maybe some of our viewers might not, like, what do you mean by a proclamation? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. That's a great place to start. So, what we're talking about, what Melissa and I are working on, is the governor's proclamation, which is an official document from the governor that says this particular day, week, month, whatever is dedicated to this particular cause. In our case, of course, we're saying May, Fibromyalgia Awareness Month, the
Okay.
12th.
Oh,
Melissa's
right.
got hers
This
right there.
one.
And it is an official document. It
Wow.
actually becomes part of the
So cool.
state's official government record. So like you can
Wow.
go out there and you can look it up. And the main reason that, I mean, all of that is cool and important. And obviously, it brings awareness. The governor becomes aware of fibromyalgia if nothing else happens, right? But more importantly, and Melissa can talk more about this, but when our advocates go to Washington, D.C. and are talking to lawmakers, it carries a lot of weight to be able to talk to your senator and say, hey, our governor has recognized this. Right. Or to be able, this is another reason why we wanted to be able to work together, because it holds even more weight to be able to say 27 governors did this, made this proclamation last year. So, so I think those are sometimes it feels like it's just a pretty piece of paper, right? But it does carry a lot of weight, and it does bring a lot of recognition and support in helping us with funding for things like research. Yeah. So Melissa can talk a little bit more about, process and all of that.
And I bet a way people might be able to get involved, if not for
Yeah,
this
because
year,
I know
maybe
I've
for next
already
year.
got, I posted on our Fibro Association Facebook, so that's at Fibro Association today, the beautiful map, which I meant to load up so I could share it right now, and I did not, so I apologize. But we'll have a link to that information in the show notes. But I already have someone saying, well, what would I do if I wanted to get that started? Because I pointed out that, hey, whatever states are white on that map right now need some help. So what would the process look like, Melissa?
Well, actually, and it's not just for the states that are white. I mean, just because we do need people if the states are white, because we don't have anyone at this time that we can have help us with that. But even if they're already colored that we've submitted or that we've received, we need to have a backup person or two, right? Because if somebody happens to move to a different state, which we had happen this year, where several of our people moved to different states, and all of a sudden we don't have anybody that we have in that state, it's good to have some extra people behind it. Or if somebody submits it and they live closer to the state capital than the person that submitted it, and you have somebody else that could go get it and get us in there for a photo op and pick it up in person too. That's another reason. They can reach out to Tammy's site at Fibromyalgia at the podcast location there. What is it? Fibromyalgiapodcast.com.
Yep.
And she can reach out there and be able to connect with us and everything for sure. And then she'll get me the information. And we were talking about it. It actually starts as soon as this month is over. It starts all over again. Because
So each year you're doing it. I see.
It does. Yeah, it's right away
Okay.
again. Because what happens is that every state doesn't like to be the same, of course, right? Why would it be? Fibro's not the same for anybody. Why should proclamations be any different? So it's where some of them you have to submit them only between, like, you have to be 4 weeks away from the date, but no longer than 6 weeks away from the date, right? Some of them 6 months away from the date you have is your first date that you can actually submit for it. And then there's some that are further out, and every one of them in between. And so it's knowing all of the rules and the guidelines of each one of the states want. They also, some of them want to have just so many words that they want to have in each document, or they have to have so many therefores and heretos and all that kind of good stuff. You have to have the right kind of language, how many paragraphs they want. And Sharon knows this. She taught us how to do all of this years and years ago. And so what I ended up doing was I went and pretended I lived in every single one of those states, and I made my own fake one for every one of them so that I could have a copied of every one of them filled out so that I
Like a
knew
template
the
for
information.
each.
Yeah, and so that way I would be prepared, and so when people would, reach out, I would be able to help them. So we have it
That's
either way.
amazing.
People come in contact and say, "Hey, I'm gonna do it," and I let them know that, "Okay, we've got this date coming up. This is the day that we need to have it submitted," you know, "and this is the information," and most of the time, I'll email them absolutely everything they need to say, and they have to copy and paste it into their document in order for them to do it, to submit it. Some people don't feel comfortable with computers or doing any of that kind of stuff, and they ask if I'll do it on their behalf. And Tammy says I'm their virtual assistant then. And so basically, they give me their name and their address and everything, and they say, and their email and stuff, and will you do this for me and stuff? And so I do. I submit it for their state on their behalf, and then they get the notification, and then when it comes in and everything, and that we've received that. I kind of keep track of all of them in between, whether we've actually submitted them, when we've heard back yeses and we've heard back nos. And, I always have to keep track because governors change all the time too, and just updating little bits of information. So when I do go out to on a little, I have a spa vacation once a year that I go out to Washington, and I stay at the Stackelhous Spa in Washington, Seattle, actually, and I go for a week. And when I go out there every week, usually in June, I sit down and I go back and I redo all my information again because I need to make sure I have everything updated for new, 'cause also then in January I have to check populations, right? Because we want to know populations. It's a lot of little work, is what it is.
It's
But
so
that
much
way,
work.
It's a lot of work,
Thank you for
Melissa.
doing
but
that. Oh my
well, I
god.
wanna make it as easy as possible for whoever who's going to be doing it, right? Because I
Mhm.
don't want for somebody to get this stuff and go, "Look at this website," and have told they have to do this stuff, and, like, I'm not gonna do this,
Right.
right? So we need to make it as absolutely easy as possible for them to be able to do that, and it's working. I mean, last year was our 2nd year doing it, and we were just getting started really knowing how we're gonna do it and how we're gonna contact and connect and everything like that. And I think Tammy already said we had 27 approved last year. And that's what we know of, right? Because
That's
we're still
huge.
trying to connect with other groups. We may not have had, there might have been other groups that received them that we don't know about,
Sure.
that we're still trying to connect with them so that we do know, so that we're all working together on it. And like she said, so we're not doubling up on work. And so far, as of right now, we have 19 that have been approved. And it looks like, okay, we're getting close to the end, but we're really not because we'll get them. Sometimes they'll come all the way up to the very day that we'll get them, pretty much at the very end that you'll get notified. And sometimes it's even after your deadline date that you ask,
Mhm.
but at least, and some, like you said, some are days, they only want you specific. I only want it to be this date, or some of it's the whole month. So you may not always get it on the deadline you'd like to receive them. So there's hope. We're gonna get there yet.
Wow.
Oh,
So
and
much
you
work.
volunteered all of your time to do that. Like, that is incredible, and it really sounds like you've made it very kind of, like, plug and play friendly, if you will, so that, we get that you're at home with fibro and doing a lot of things can be really difficult. So, the key piece is that it's not possible for anybody outside of your state to get that proclamation. It has to be from somebody in the state. So, Melissa, you figuring out like what that person needs and like here's the text you're going to put in the form, just put your address, do this, do it by this date. Am I hearing you right? Like, that's how
Correct.
easy you've made it.
Yeah,
It
that's all
might
they have
be
to do.
5-10 minutes at the
Yeah,
most, and
yeah.
that's on the long side, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, she has made it so incredibly easy. You can literally just copy and paste it all over. She's also on top of all the deadlines. So you don't even have to worry, fibro fog missing the deadline. Melissa's on top of it. She'll be letting you know.
I've got my calendar. As much as I like technology, I still am going to have that old school calendar on top of everything else. So I've got both bells and whistles going off, and I've got the written down one going, okay, because this is how, because like I said, every state has that different deadline and everything. And we need to make sure that we keep up with it. And because sometimes once in a while, like the no is maybe one of them we received was in the past is that we've already too many medical or health conditions were already submitted for that month, right? And so we're
We've
not
gotten
gonna,
that for this year for Michigan.
yeah, we don't
Yeah.
want to have that with this one, right? Because
Yep.
that, so then they're like, how about if you contact us? This one I just received from Tennessee actually, and so if you've contacted us by such and such a date, right? And then maybe we can get you added in on the one that was already there, So if we can figure those reasons out by getting the no's that we do,
Mm.
the reasons, maybe we can find somebody on the inside that can tell us the whys and how to get around them, and who can we get added to, who do we need to talk to? And that's where even some people who are in person can, like she said, I go down there and talk to people about it too.
Mhm.
And what I've done, I've used the day as a day to reach out to my own state legislators and work
Mhm.
with them on getting these. Um, because, the state legislators too change every couple years. And so it's an opportunity to get in front of somebody new who has that position. And then a lot of them go on to have other positions in the state government or even on the national level. And then you have that connection and you can talk about things. And I have around creating bills that will actually like impact somebody's life with fibromyalgia. And so that's what we're doing here too, is that it's having that additional impact.
Well,
So,
that's kind of why we were talking about too, with like if you have the other day Tammy and I were talking about if you have people there that are close by that can go pick them up in person. So you have a photo op, right? So that you can meet the person, talk to them for a few minutes and do that. On Tammy's podcast the other day, I was telling her that one time I actually had our state rep that was at the time, she thought it would be really great since she knew it was there. She drove it up from Madison and brought it to the school I was working to at the time that happened to be dress up day that day, and it was pajama dress up day. And so, which was like Tammy said, it was appropriate because I had 2 drawers worth of pajamas because of fibromyalgia, so plenty to choose from. And I had my slippers on. And so at the time, Ms. Schachner was one of our representatives, and she came and we had a great photo op in my pajamas and everything. I was holding on to the proclamation, but it was something to talk about, right? And
it is.
and we could talk about it, and I know that she was talking about it at bingo the next weekend, I mean, so that means that it was getting, people were talking about fibromyalgia one way or another.
That's
And
right.
that's part of what Awareness Day is also about. And just in the interest of time, want to wrap up. We'll ask you if you guys have any last things you wanted to say. But part of why we are airing this show when we are is because coming right around the corner is the Fibro Association Awareness Day event that Sharon has been working her butt off. And I've been trying to help a little bit where I can.
You
So
have. You
maybe you
totally
can
have. Yeah, so we'll do the plug now. So.
plug.
And then we're going to come back though to Tammy and Melissa. So stay tuned. Got a few more points to wrap up on here. But if you're struggling with fibromyalgia or know somebody who has, or you're hearing not much can be done for fibromyalgia, that is the purpose of our Fibromyalgia Awareness Day conference. This is our 24th year doing the event. We have 2 amazing speakers. Dr. Ginevra will be one of the speakers, and Dr. Daniel Claw, who is the director of the Chronic Pain and Fatigue Research Center at the University of Michigan and a world-renowned researcher on fibromyalgia. He's going to be sharing research insights as well as management strategies. Ginevra is going to talk more about management strategies, and together the 2 of us are going to chat more on some self-care strategies that really help. And there's some of those very ones that the 4 of us were just talking about that we implement on a daily basis to enable us to go out and do the things that we, want to be able to do and enjoy doing. So the conference is only $12. This not only gets you into the event, which is virtual on Zoom on May 10th from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you can't be there live, you'll get a recording of the event within 5 days of the event. We encourage you to come live, though, because you might be able to get your questions answered. And not only then do you get those 2 things, but you're actually also funding the Fibromyalgia Association, which is a nonprofit that I founded We're celebrating 28 years this year, and we provide patient and physician education and support programs. And so we use this event as a way to raise money to enable us to do all sorts of outreach all year long. So we would love your support. And you can go to managefibro.org. That's managefibro.org for registration and for more details, and learn more about the proclamations and things that we're talking about here. We'll put a link to that in as well. So register today. And be sure also to like, subscribe, and ring the bell on our show so that
Do
you
all the
always get
YouTube things.
notified of new content. By liking and subscribing too, you are helping our show to be seen by more viewers. So you're actually helping to raise fibromyalgia awareness. So that's just another little something you can do on your own to help us raise awareness. So let's wrap up. I think, Ginevra, you had a couple questions you were going to ask them.
Did I? I feel like I asked them everything. Do you guys have anything like what is your last, like, if you had like some parting words of advice for somebody struggling, listening in their pajamas in a world of pain from fibromyalgia? Like, do you have any kind of words of advice you like to give folks, or just any last parting words, and also maybe where people can find you?
Go ahead, Melissa. I'll let you go
I
first.
knew she was going to do that. I knew she was gonna do that. She's going to think, so I have to go first.
You know what? Well, I'll give you a minute to think. So you think for 1 minute, because I left off something super important for my little plug on Awareness Day, which is a huge shout out to our amazing sponsors, our official sponsors, our tonics, and also the Fibro Show here. And
the
then we
Fibro
have
Podcast.
2 more amazing sponsors, and that's the Fibromyalgia Podcast, Tami Stackelhous. Thank you for supporting our day. And the law firm of Ravyn Benjamin, who specializes in Social Security disability for fibro, or for Social Security disability, but they've done amazing work in fibro, and I've known them and had support group members work with them the last 28 years. So, Melissa, did that buy you some time then to share your parting thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I do think that the most important thing that they can do is to, like you said earlier, is to connect with somebody who has fibro, but most of all, connect with somebody also that has had fibro, even by following, like you guys, connecting to one of you or all of you, to be able to follow somebody who's been doing this for such a long time and has had the experience and understands the ups and downs, whether it's reading a book or like both of you guys have had books in the past and the podcast, etc. I think that's the most important thing you can do, because otherwise you're closed off. And if you're in your own little world surrounded by people that don't have fibro, I don't think that anything else is really going to help you, because you really need that person that you can talk to just to get good and bad, out. I think that's the most important part. You need to have a fibro bestie. That's the most
Yes,
important thing to have out there.
that is really good advice.
I think that's important. I do. I think it's important.
I agree. And building community. I think just being
think so
around
too.
people that understand what you're going through, people that believe you, just that validation of like, yes, I totally hear you. Because trying to explain what like fibrofug feels like to somebody who doesn't have fibromyalgia is exhausting. Somebody who also has fibromyalgia is like, totally, don't even have to explain, 100% get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of books, though, I wanted you really quickly, if you could tell us about what inspired you to write Ravyn's Doll, which is right behind you. Maybe you can show
Yeah, show that up on
I
the
think it's
screen
a
here.
really cool.
I mean, I had to pull this up and show. There's a picture.
I did. It's
Oh,
like,
very nice.
So anyways, actually I wrote it when my daughter was little, and her name happens to be Ravyn. And I just sat down because, little kids just don't understand what it is like to have somebody who's in the family that has to deal with fibro, right? And if it's coming from the point of a child explaining it to somebody, so that's what Ravyn's basically doing. Is she's in this classroom, and the nurse is coming today, and they're going to talk about, their family members who've been hurt or injured or sick in some way, and they have paper patients that they have to take home and dress up. And so she comes in, her little doll looks absolutely perfect, and nobody seems to understand why. And she starts to explain that her mommy has fibromyalgia, which means that she's sick on the inside and not the outside. And so she kind of starts to explain what it is, and even how to pronounce it for those adults that need to know how to pronounce it. I even have that in there. but it's just kind of a good way for them to be able to understand why it hurts for us to get on the floor to play with them, or why we have to take a nap in order for us to do anything else, or even as they grow up, to be able to do things with them and everything. So
And
that's why I did it, you know.
I am
Wonderful.
tearing up
Yeah.
listening
No.
to that, and I'm thinking that actually there are adults
I
who
was
need your
thinking
book.
that same thing. Could we just be like, spouses also should read?
I tell you, I have actually recommended Melissa's book to a bunch of my clients that don't even have kids, because you also have your nieces, your nephews, your grandkids, the kids at church. Like there are so many places this book can be used, but just leave it out.
Yeah,
It's so cute. Who's not going to pick it up and just sort of flip through?
it really
Right.
is. It was a huge bestseller at my clinic. Like, I just walked out the door and I was like, okay, I'll get another one. I walked out the door. I was like, okay, people love it. So, and they can
Uh,
get it on Amazon, right? Is that where?
Yeah, it is on
Yeah.
Amazon. I have it both in Spanish and in English. And then I have a coloring book version that for the littles, so that there's just no color to it and it's just big and they can color it. It has been nice. That there's been a little bit of lesson plans that I have attached to it on my Facebook site too, or my website and everything, where kids can go on and print a paper doll and make their own little Ravens doll, or whoever their person is, their mother in their life or father that's in their
Aw,
life or somebody. Yeah, so I don't know. It's been
beautiful.
pretty exciting, and it is nice. What I do like about it is the fact that even though it's only in English and Spanish right now, is every once in a while when you get that notification that Amazon sells, right? But the fact that it's somewhere another country that you wouldn't expect when it's not necessarily in their language, and just the
Right.
fact that you've reached somebody else in some other. So that part for me, is really big.
Oh, I
And
love
I like
it.
it. Thank
Love
you.
it so much.
Yeah.
Aw. Tammy, I don't know. You can follow that. Sorry.
That's what I'm thinking as I'm sitting here.
Oh,
Give
you
me your best
sweet.
shot.
Yeah.
You got it. You got it.
So what was the question again? Where are we going with this?
I don't
Parting
know.
thought, words of
Parting
wisdom to
wisdom.
I don't know. Words of
somebody.
wisdom, and then she went to the book.
So one of the things I do want to say before I get to some parting thoughts, is that the next step of this Proclamations project that we would we want to, of course, paint the whole map purple, right? We can't always control the yeses or the nos, but we want to at least apply in all 50 states. So that's the first goal. So to at least get that lighter purple everywhere. And then the next part of it is, like Melissa was talking about, having people go and pick up the proclamations, and not just one person. It would be so awesome if we could start to see, even if it's just 3 or 4 people show up together for that. It adds so much weight to what we do. And one of my coaches, Ann Garner in South Dakota, she tried to do this. Of course, fibro gets in the way of these things sometimes, right? Which means, this is just another reason why we need more than just one person everywhere, right? So that if fibro happens, we have a backup, right? So those are our next steps with this particular project. And then also, if you're watching this and you live in a completely different country and your country does something like this, that would be awesome too. Right? Like I would be happy painting the globe purple.
Yeah.
I'll make the map bigger.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic.
Today's episode ran long, so we're going to divide it into 2. You'll see the second portion of this episode next week. In the meantime, please like and subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you can be notified every time one of our shows drop. In the meantime, we're sending you all some fibro love.